Welcome back to Focus Miss Gaming, and today we're going to talk about Mr. Mime of all things. Now, little pretext to this is I scoured the internet for a little bit, looking at if there any previous Gen 9 Mr. Mime guides existed, and the closest I could find was things on Pokemon Unite. So I don't think anybody's actually got any content out there. I might be wrong, but I thought about finishing up the starter trio from Kanto, and I was like, well, naturally, we could start with talking about Mega Pidgeot or talking about Mega Beedrill. But then a thought occurred of, we're covering a lot of different draftable mons. So let's talk about something that somebody probably might draft by looking at some of the potential on paper and seeing if it's actually worth it or not. Because just as important high tier mons are, low tier mons also construct a lot of that meat and potatoes of filling out roster building and trying to fill important niche roles. And Mr. Mime is a weird one, so to speak. So talking about it and understanding how it actually plays out is Mr. Mime's stats. So we're actually talking about 3 different mons today, not just one. We have Cantonian Mr. Mime, Galarian Mr. Mime, and we're going to touch on Mr. Rime, which is the evolution. We're not going to talk about the Mime Jr. or anything because that's more Little Cup oriented than anything else, and not really draftable in a traditional Nat Dex singles environment. So, stats. Cantonian Mr. Mime is abysmal for HP and attack. F's in both stats. Special attack's respectable, and it's got decent special defense, and it's got okay speed. Now you might be thinking, looking at this, and like, hey, that could maybe be a special wall. Don't be fooled. Whenever you do see something that has very high defenses but has very minimal HP, it's kind of your Dusclops, Dusk Noir problem of it can't actually tank that much. So just keep that in mind. And then the Galarian version, actually a little bit better, a little bit more balanced, so to speak, with D- and C- attack, defense, HP. Loses a little bit on the special defensive side, and we'll pull up on the right side and look at what some of these mons are when we take a peek at some of the sets. And again, a little bit better speed. And then Mr. Rime, the evolution, it does that thing where your evolved mon gets a little bit better offensive or defensive stats, and it drops some speed, and the HP is actually starting to creep up into usable territory. So that's kind of nice, right? We have Cantonian, which is arguably the worst, and then we have Galarian and Mr. Rime, which might be usable depending on the context, but that context is very important because as we look at their typings, Cantonian typing, Psychic Fairy isn't actually that bad of a typing. If you think about it, you've got 3 weaknesses, you get 2 resist, and you get an immunity, right? Like, most mons can live with that. That's your Screamtail setup, right? And that's a very draftable mon. Hatterene is another Psychic Fairy that's running around that a lot of people draft, and you're like, oh, that combo probably works. And it can follow suit in using similar niche roles. Galarian typing, though. Ice Psychic, the classic Jinx combo of you got 6 weaknesses, you get 2 resists, which are, funny enough, the types that you are, and it doesn't get any immunities. So let's look at this, right? You're weak to U-turn, you're weak to Pursuit, you're weak to basically every steel move, right? Ghost moves are very common offensive choices, so you're going to be weak to those. Fire is another very offensive set. And when you're weak to rock, you're weak to stealth rock and entry hazards. So that is the Sisyphean climb of trying to hold on to some relevance, which is a little unfortunate for Galarian because it has the better stats to use, but it gets absolutely dunked on in the type department. As looking at the abilities for Mr. Mime, Soundproof is a very niche ability. There's certain mons that it is quite good against that like to use sound-based moves. So if you're against something that uses Boom Burst, Torch Song, Psy Noise, they can blank it. Clangorous Soul, I believe, is another one that's sound-based. Filter is a great ability, especially if you're thinking about using it as like a specially defensive mon. But remember, when your HP is so paper thin, Cantonian Mr. Mime has 40 base HP. It doesn't really matter, right? Anything that's hitting you for neutral with a respectable attack stat is going to knock you out. And then Technician. Technician's pretty good. It gets that kind of B rating, but it's very Pokemon dependent on what your move pool is, if you can actually take advantage of it. And unfortunately, Mr. Mime doesn't really take advantage of it despite having a pretty diverse move pool. And then the Galarian version, you get Vital Spirit. It's a D. It's nice to be able to not fear Spore or Hypnosis. That's pretty much it if you're running a lead mon and you see the other person has like an Amoonguss or a Breloom or what have you, if they're running like Ninetales Hypnosis, but again, that's the least of your worries. Screen Cleaners, that B+, it's really good against certain matchups or if an opponent has certain tendencies. So if they're bringing in Grimmsnarl or they're bringing Ninetales Alola for Aurora Veil, right? Galarian Mr. Mime really incentivizes them not to bring those kinds of sets. And then you have Ice Body. Ice Body's an F tier. This mon isn't going to be built for sustainability most of the time. Getting benefits from snow, you'd have to manually set up snow itself generally, or if you're pivoting into it, you're going to be looking at chili reception. And there's no real reason to pair this thing with either Slowking. It's not good. And then Tinkled Feet doubles evasion when you're confused. There's generally clauses against evasion boosting in draft, so a lot of times it's going to get banned, but trying to rely on something like Teeter Dance to be really cheeky if it is allowed is just delaying the inevitable in my opinion, so I wouldn't mess with it too much. You do. So overall for abilities, you get Screen Cleaner if you got Galarian, that's your kind of go-to, and if you're Cantonian, you're probably looking at Filter more time, like 9 times out of 10. Technician, we'll look at the move pool and decide, hey, is there something that actually can use Technician? And then Soundproof is if you want to run like a really goofy stored power set and you don't want to get roared out, right? That's going to be, or you want to blank certain offensive checks. So maybe you're in a lower tier league and somebody's got Boom Burst, Explode Loud, right? This checks that. Plain and simple. So let's look at moves and then we'll start taking a peek at these sets. So be prepared to pause the video, but Mr. Mime has a lot of moves that it can use. So stab options, Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, Expanding Force, Future Sight, Psyshock, Stored Power. Pretty straightforward. Those are the best stab options I saw there. It has other ones, of course. If you really want to roll the dice with like Psywave or something, you can, but these are what I recommend. And then it's coverage. You're looking at Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, woohoo, and Mystical Fire, Grass Knot, Foul Play, which is usable because it uses the opponent's attack stat, not yours. You do get Sucker Punch for what it's worth, not that you'll ever be clicking that move. And then Signal Beam for bug coverage if you really want that. But most of the time, if you want like dark coverage, you're just going to rock Dazzling Gleam. And then let's talk utility moves. So being a Gen 1 mon, Mr. Mime has access to a lot of goofy moves, right? I mean, if you look at something like Tauros, you're like, why does it get Surf, right? So the unique utility moves for Cantonian Mr. Mime include, I'm going to list them off if you're listening, you're like driving in the car and you don't want to look at the screen. Baton Pass, Teleport, Combine, Nasty Plot, Counter, Endure, Encore, Fake Out, Healing Wish, Icy Wind, both screens, Taunt, Trick, Trick Room, Toxic Thunderwave, Substitute, Snatch, Power Swap, Power Split, Guard Swap, Iron Defense or Barrier, they do the same thing, Infestation, Hypnosis, Fling, Copycat or Mimic, Charm, Brick Break, Psych Up, Recycle, Rain Dance and Sunny Day, Magic Coat, Rest Sleep Talk, and Swagger. That is a lot of options. Most mons can't even sniff that. And you're like, okay, so what do we have here? Let's condense this. We have Pivot, right? We got Baton Pass and Teleport. You have Negative Priority, or you have using your standard speed. You have setup moves. You have Calm Mind and Nasty Plot. If you're a special leaning mon, in attack or defense. Those are great options. You have Disruption with Taunt, Trick, Fake Out, right? You have Trapping, Infestation. You have Hypnosis, Thunderwave, Toxic. You get Status as well. You also get counterplay for hazards in using, again, like Taunt and stuff like that. You have Weather Support if you really want that. You have the kind of like Psychic suite of Trickery with Power Swap and Power Split, which is what those moves do is they replace your attacking stats with your opponent's stats, or they balance them out, which can be really nice to neutralize a really strong physical attacker that's a bit slower and give it Mr. Mime's really poor attacking stat. And then you have Iron Defense and Barrier. Again, your defenses are so paper thin, it might not matter even getting a +2 boost, but it does exist, so you got that. You got Brick Break to break through the opponent's other screens if you really want that, and you get a little bit of speed control with stuff like Icy Wind. So all in all, you also get Trick Room too, and you can use that with Trick Room and Teleport and set up your Trick Room on. Now, is it the best Trick Room setter? Absolutely not, but you can do it. That's the key here. Now, there is some slight differences between Cantonian and Galarian, so I've only highlighted the differences in their move pools down below. So, stab options, since we're adding Psychic instead of Fairy, we get Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Ice Beam, Triple Axle, and Ice Shard. Since the attack stat for Mr. Rime is a little bit higher, you can actually make an argument to use physical moves in a niche scenario. If something's like, say, quad weak to ice, and you expect it to be bulking up its special defenses. Or if you have something that's faster, you need to hit it with an Ice Shard, you can do that. It also gets Stomping Tantrum, oddly enough. It gets Physical Ground Move, so I guess that's cool. But the big one, why Galarian kind of steals the show away from Cantonian, is you get Rapid Spin. So you can actually clear hazards now, instead of just only having screens as your real support option for defenses. Mr. Rime gets Slack Off, so you can lean even more into a defensive role. Now you also get Recovery, but you also lose the benefits of Teleport when you look at Mr. Rime and Mr. Mime Galar, which I'd say pretty fair trade getting Rapid Spin for Teleport. I make that deal every day. All right, so what are we looking at? So our team fit and our item usage. You're looking at some quintessential filler, right? Mr. Mime is draft chaff in the definition, right? It's got low stats, it doesn't have threatening speed, but it's got a very enticing move pool that might tell you, hey, I want to take this. Especially for Mr. Rime and Galarian Mr. Mime, because you get also things like Freeze Dry, which is a very valuable move that does not have a huge distribution. So being able to hit bulky water types is always nice. So what's this guy do? They patch a hole in your team if you want like a Psychic Fairy or a Psychic Support one, essentially, regardless of form that you pick. So what are the items that you're picking up for this guy? Light Clay, it's a very good choice user thanks to Trick. Heavy Duty Boots, especially on the Galarian variant because you're weak to rocks. Focus Sash if it's your lead. Eviolite for Galarian Mr. Mime to bulk up that defensive stat, especially if you want to lean into being a specially defensive wall. Flame Orb if you want to be able to trick it onto something. I put Moronga Berry and Enigma Berry on here. They're kind of goofy. But you can look up what they do. And I think I have a set that highlights what they do as well. Ring Target's also really fun to trick onto something. It makes something lose its resistances, essentially, and every move can hit it. And then Custap Berry if you want to jump the priority order. That is also a option. Terra options. Cantonian, don't. I know that I'm supposed to give you recommendations here on what kind of Terra types that you should. Don't waste a Terra option on Mr. Mime. If you do, I'd say maybe Terra Dark to hose Prankster that's trying to counter your setup, but that's really the only thing I could brainstorm. As for the Galarian version, you've got nearly every single option in the world is an improvement. And it's actually not a bad Terra Captain, I would say, considering the support move pool and the relatively better stats. So anything, right, from ground, water, flying, heck, normal types even better, right? So anything that is not being an ice psychic type, it is one of those things that benefits so much just by being able to change that one little thing. So let's look at a few different sets that I've prepped. So I've tried to keep it fairly even distribution. We're going to look at regular Mr. Mime, so we have 2 support setups. Here we have the light clay and screens setup, so this one's very straightforward. You got max speed, max HP for what it's worth. You could also take the HP, put it in special defense if you really want. Doesn't make too much of a difference. And then you're running 1 attacking move and being Psyshock, just so if you do get hit by taunt, you're not completely left out to dry. And so, pretty simple game plan here, right? Set screens, teleport, give your Ursa Luna or whatever, that slower mon that's maybe a bit bulkier, your Archaladon, for instance, a bit of room to work with screens and get them time to set up or fire off some really strong stab attacks. So, not going to linger on this one too much, but it's a pretty straightforward and easy to understand set. Next one. This is more leaning into just generalized support, so you're looking at heavy duty boots so you can come in, not get hurt by hazards. You have Encore to disrupt people that are trying to set up, that are slower than base 90 plus. Thunderwave, again, status disruption. Seismic Toss, since you do not have great attacking stats, that's still, Seismic Toss is going to be something that can break through sub, so that way you don't get left out to dry again that way. And then Future Sight is to punish anybody that's going to be weak to psychic moves. You want something that goes through Protect, perhaps, so it gives you a little bit more variability there. But again, another kind of generalized support mon. You could play around with some of the more intricate support moves if you wish. If you want to bring something like Power Swap or Snatch, or you can trade out Thunderwave for Toxic, or do Healing Wish on the screens mon. All of those work kind of interchangeably, but they have the same general game plan, which is not being the star of the show, letting your other more powerful ones do their work and make it a little bit easier for them. And then if for some god-awful reason you want to run support Mr. Mime, and you're like, hey, they'd never see it coming, because who would? You could run something like this. You could run Calm Mind, Psychic Terrain, Expanding Force, Endure. If you survive long enough with Mr. Mime and are able to get this off, you can do some decent damage, right? You can maybe get off 1 Calm Mind, a Psychic Terrain, click Endure. Now here's the problem too. Psychic Terrain blocks priority. Endure, I believe, has priority, so you'd need to proc Endure before Psychic Terrain goes off, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. So you need your opponent to do nothing, which is a big ask, right? And then you can click Expanding Force. If you can get down to low HP naturally, which might not be that hard, you get your boost from Salic Berry. And then Soundproof, the reason we'd run Soundproof is so we can't get phased out, right? They can't click Roar on you, which is pretty nice. But again, this is a very bad set, but it is a set that exists. We'll look at some of the other support and offensive sets that are on the Galarian versions that kind of transfer over. If you wanted to do a stored power version of Mr. Mime for God knows what reason, you can, again, do things like Barrier, Calm Mind, and have Salic Berry. And you get a lot of boosts, but it's like putting whipped cream on a pile of garbage. It doesn't make it that much better, unfortunately. And most other mons are still going to be able to find a way to muscle through you, even if you have like Soundproof or Filter. Now, the Galarian version. This is the quintessential, and I've actually seen this drafted before, so I know it's out there in the wild, is Galarian Mr. Mime, comes in with heavy duty boots because you want to avoid that rocks, and you've got Rapid Spin, Healing Wish, Taunt, Mirror Coat. Pretty straightforward here. The goal is I'm going to Rapid Spin, I can Taunt to make sure they can't set rocks again if I'm faster than you, which hopefully you are. With being base speed 100 now, it's a very competitive tier, but hey, that does outspeed a lot of common rockers. And then you have Healing Wish, so once your job is done, you salute to your team and you allow somebody that maybe got worn down earlier in the match to come in fully recharged. And you also have Mirror Coat too, so if somebody's trying to bully through you especially, and they're like, hey, I'm just gonna fire off Flamethrower, and you're like, hey, I maybe live this calc with like 4% health. Great little option to include. I'm a little more leaning towards Mirror Coat than Counter, because Counter, again, having less defensive bulk doesn't guarantee you to be able to actually click that move and use it. So this is the Hazard Control Mr. Mime. Not a bad set, especially if you want to do Terra. I did Terra Ghost on here, so they cannot rapid spin back against you, so you actually spin block while being able to spin and do your thing and disrupt them. And also, Screen Cleaner gets rid of any reflect or light screen that your opponent set up, which is, hey, really nice. Second one, so if you want to lead with Mr. Mime Galler, this is a variant. You can see it's a bit more offensive leaning. So my idea here is, when you have a lead, say you're going against something like Dawn Fan, for example, let's use that. Fake Out is going to break Sturdy, right? You have Freeze Dry, Foul Play, Toxic. We're negative defense, but we really don't care. We're not going to live a lot. That's why we have Focus Sash, so we at least get 2 turns, right, between using Fake Out, breaking someone else's Sash, right? Say we're against a Smeargle, and then we can click Freeze Dry with our decently respectable special attack and get in some damage. Vital Spirit is here instead of Screen Cleaner, because with the lead, one of the worst things that could happen to us, say is like they lead Smeargle, they click Spore, right? Say they're Covert Cloak Spore, for example. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's better to be prepared and not got caught off guard, and then be able to actually execute your game plan. So this is another type of sport if you're like, hey, I just need to get out some easy disruption, or I don't have a good lead into this matchup, I can just sacrifice Mr. Mime Galler and let them do a little bit of thing by either getting off status or throwing off the opponent's game plan of wanting to set hazards immediately if they have a lot of different varied options. So yeah, that is the second version of support. Setup Sweeper. So like I was talking about earlier, this is the I want to click the stored power button. I went with Terra Water here just to have a better defensive type. If you want to just maximize damage output, go Terra Psychic. But Rapid Spin increases your speed, which is going to be important for sweeping. Barrier increases defense, and you got Calm Mind as well to increase your damage output as well as your staying power, especially. Eviolite is also going to pull a lot of good weight here by upping both of your defenses by 50%, so you can actually take some hits. Now, the only real problem with this is getting statused, right? There's no built-in help for this if you get paralyzed or poisoned, so make sure you scout properly. Screen Cleaner as well. You don't have to include Screen Cleaner here. I like this because it gets rid of enemy screens if they've used them throughout the match, and you don't have to try and muscle through those by getting off a few boosts if it's really early. But the other one I would pick would be Vital Spirit. That way, again, you at least fade one type of status that would pretty much stop you right in your tracks. So that's the Setup Sweeper variant of Mr. Mime Galler. And it also works on Cantonian Mr. Mime, but a little bit worse because your defenses and your HP stat are going to be significantly lower, and you can't use Eviolite to boost your defenses. This is the only version that gets that boost, so keep that in mind. Raw Offensive Mr. Mime Galler. Those words don't feel right coming out of my mouth, but this is a version that you could rock. So taking advantage of using decently fast Trick paired with Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, and Thunderbolt. You get Bolt Beam coverage with Choice Specs, which, hey, not gonna complain, right? Terra type can be Ice here if you want to boost the Ice damage. You can also do Electric, or I would choose one of your attacking move types just to boost that damage. So again, this one's pretty straightforward, is you're like, hey, if they have a lot of bulky water types and they have a bunch of mons that are weak to ice, this is where you're gonna switch in Mr. Mime Galler and you're just gonna click Freeze Dry over and over. It's a very boring game plan, but that does not mean it is not effective, right? So this one doesn't require a lot of thinking. And then again, Screen Cleaner kind of come in clutch, where if they're trying to protect themselves with light screen, that's going to be a no-go for them. So last ones, we got Mr. Rime, which are, again, all the previous sets that Mr. Mime can use, Mr. Rime can use too. But looking at Mr. Rime's support set, so if we want to look at a Trick Room set that doesn't take advantage of teleport, for example, and you maybe want a little bit more staying power. So we have Trick Room, Toxic, Baton Pass, because remember, we lose teleport for the Galarian version, and then also Slack Off. So if for some reason you don't want to Baton Pass off your Trick Room to whatever mod you got, you can stay in with Toxic and try to outpace something and heal them off. I included Mental Herb here because getting taunted, if you look at the moves, we don't have any offensive moves, so Taunt would just immediately shut you down, and this guarantees that we can at least get one move off, right? We're also running negative speed because if we're gonna have a Baton Pass, we would want to pass second, so we absorb the hit for the mon that would come in. And again, your HP is actually at 80 now, which is, hey, pretty nice. And special defense, 100, and hey, we take that, right? Terra type, you could go with ice, but I would go with something like, I don't know, ground, let's say. So they can't Volt Switch on you, for example. That could be a reason. But again, just about any other type works for Mr. Mime, Galar, or Mr. Rime. Offensive. So say you want to go with that slow, bulky kind of attacker. Again, your Terra type is probably going to be something else, and this is ideal if you're going to use Mr. Rime as a Terra Captain. So this is your Substitute, Calm Mind, and then Bolt Beam coverage, right? So Mr. Mime's decently chunky if you pick a good Terra type to resist some of the moves your opponent's going to want to click to break through. And you might have some decent sweeping ability with this, given the set. You might also want to trade out HP for speed, depending on what you're trying to outspeed. So always check your calcs and make sure that you actually have something viable and not just clicking substitute for it to immediately break over and over and you get stuck in that loop. All right, so that's a general offensive Mr. Rime set, and this is very common for a lot of setup sweepers, is they click substitute, and then they click setup move, and then they click one of their two offensive moves, which one of them we want to be stab, and freeze dry is going to be our best option. If they don't have a bulky water type, you'd probably want to go with ice beam instead, just for that up in damage, because freeze dry, it's only 70, ice beam's 90. All right, so let's talk one more set before we start talking about who these mons actually pair well with. And we have our offensive variant of Mr. Rime, which is the Choice Scarf. So we looked at Choice Specs. We can also use Choice Scarf very effectively. I included a full suite of different moves. So we have Bolt Beam coverage, we have Ice Beam and Freeze Dry. So if we want to hit the water type, or if we want to just do higher base damage for Ice Beam, that we can do. We also want Psyshock, so if they try to switch in a specially defensive mon, you can hit it on the presumably weaker side of defenses. And then again, Thunderbolt kind of rounds out our coverage matrix to make sure that we can hit just about every single mon for at least neutral damage. And then your Choice Scarf, your speed with Mr. Rime Galar being Choice Scarfed is pretty decent. You'll be surprised about the mons that you can outspeed. You're going to be outspeeding at least base 120 mons if they're running max speed, so that's really nice. I'll talk about in a later video, but the kind of sweet spot for Choice Scarf users is around 70 speed, actually. That's anything slower and then 70 speed, you get the drop off in value as faster mons will still outpace you even if you are scarfed. But 70 is the bottom of that kind of threshold. So if we actually look at Mr. Rime, right, and we throw in 252 speed, let's just pick a random speed nature, and we go look at Choice Scarf, 393, and we're like, okay, what is 393 outspeed? So if we slot on over here, we could look at what's a common faster lead. What if we went with Sneasler? Let's do the Unburdened. 372. Hey, we're faster, right? That's pretty good. What about something a little bit faster, like Mousecurata? Mousecurata is another lead. Oh, 393. 379. Faster than max speed Mousecurata, which has base speed of 123. So we would be just about fast enough to outspeed everything 130 base speed and below, which is pretty decent, right? That's most mons in the field that you encounter. The only things we're not going to be outspeeding are going to be like Qianpao, Mega Manetric, Mega Aerodactyl, Dragapult, Electrode. You see that, but you see that the list is pretty small. Every other quintessential fast mon we're beating with Choice Scarf, which is really cool, at base 70. So that's something I really do like about Mr. Mime, especially if you want to use it as a Terra Captain. I think this set might honestly be its best set. And then if going here, yeah, if you use Choice Scarf with Mr. Mime Galar, of course you're going to be outspeeding stuff. So that's the generalized sets that you can run with this. Now, can you run more? Of course you can. There's so many support moves that you can kind of make something depending on what you want to do. But let's talk about the partners. So if you're drafting Mr. Mime or Mr. Mime Galar as filler for a team, what are the teammates that you want to have? What are some of your allies, enemies, and prey? Or AEP, I might just call in the future. So allies, we talked about it briefly, but Ursaluna. I like Ursaluna here a lot for being kind of the Trick Room recipient, mostly because you can click Trick Room and Wish, and it's faster than Hatterene if you want to do that version. Also, being able to get knocked out, I know, but dying in the battle and letting Ursaluna come in for free is also pretty nice. So it gives you a really good opportunity for your slow sweeper mon to really do some damage, especially if you give it screens beforehand. So that's one mon that you might draft in like first 3 rounds and you want a little bit more support for. Another one that's kind of weird is Indeedee. So if you want to double down on Psychic Terrain and Expanding Force use with Specs or Scarf, Indeedee with a Terrain Extender and Healing Wish themselves can pass that off to, say, like Offensive Scarf Mr. Mime with Expanding Force, right? And you can just click the Psychic move if they do not have a Dark type or a good Steel type to resist you, and you can pump out just massive amounts of damage. Now, is that the best way to use Indeedee? Probably not, right? There's a lot of other mods that take more advantage of terrain than Mr. Mime or Mr. Rhyme, but that is one of the better options, I would say, for an ally. Another one, Zoroark Hisui. It's a disguise mod. This is very gimmicky, but again, if you're trying to fade certain coverage moves or, again, give your opponent more time to think about, is it actually Mr. Mime or not? It might give you an opportunity to click your support moves a little bit faster. Now, if they have screens and you run Screen Cleaner and Mr. Mime comes in or not, they might kind of be of a tell, but I do think with its speed and its choice options as well, because they both get Trick, it's not the worst to do. Another one, Gouging Fire. I think Gouging Fire works pretty well due to being able to swap in for setting screens. You can blank dragon moves with Cantonian Mr. Mime, although I probably wouldn't want to just tank anything. And you can also threaten opposing water types with Freeze Dry with Mr. Mime Galar, which Gouging Fire does struggle to power muscle through a lot of water types, so having a decent Freeze Dry mon is actually really nice here. And so it can be a sneaky good late round pickup to pair with Gouging Fire. Another one, Terrakion. So why do I include Terrakion? It's very similar to Gouging Fire and being a physical kind of sweeper. So some opponents might be kind of greedy, and they might know you're item reliant. Being a psychic type, you are going to be vulnerable to knockoff. And Terrakion is a great mon to deter opponents from just spamming knockoff due to the justified ability. If you're not familiar, that is where if you get hit by a dark type move, you get +1 attack. And so Terrakion can slip in if you either can baton pass or just hard switch out, and you can absorb the knockoff meant for your Mr. Rhyme or Mr. Mime. Being a psychic type, it's most likely going to kill you because it's a physical move, and Terrakion gets that boost and is able to throw out some really strong moves. Also, with having speed control like Thunder Wave and Icy Wind, Terrakion likes opponents to be worn down and generally be slower. It only has 108 base speed, so it's not the fastest thing in the world. So it likes support like Webs or Thunder Wave, which Mr. Mime can do one of those things. So that's pretty good. Also, you can set up screens. Again, Terrakion doesn't have the greatest typing, so it itself can get knocked out pretty easily by its weaknesses. So having screens can give it some staying power. So really good mon to pair it up with. Another one, Druidigon. So if we're looking for, for some reason, if you want to run hyper offense in a draft and you're like, okay, I need to brainstorm, I have 10 points left in my draft pool, I need some kind of defensive core or some kind of disruption to kind of round out my my roster. Druidigon is, in many ways, not a very good dragon, but it does get some key support moves that Mr. Mime doesn't. It gets Stealth Rock, it gets Glare, and it can Phase. All really valuable, while also having rough skin and good physical defenses. Dragon also being a pretty decent defensive type, where you're only going to be weak to Fairy and Ice moves and Dragon moves, which, if you take Mr. Mime, either version, they're okay coming in on those kind of moves, if they're at least specially geared, which they most likely are going to be if they're going to be trying to knock out Druidigon. So it's a very weird kind of core to throw together. I would not have them be part of like a Fairy Dragon Steel core. Like if you tell me it's like, oh yeah, my Fairy Dragon Steel core, it's Druidigon, Mr. Mime, and Orthworm. I might give you a strange look, but it technically fits the bill, right? So those are some of the good allies I would pair with Mr. Mime, or at least give some thought to. Or again, you can use mons that fill similar roles. Enemies. The section's short. Most physically offensive mons with more speed. I couldn't think of anything specific to this, but there's so many Pokemon that just absolutely steal Mr. Mime's lunch money. Mr. Mime tends to melt. Also, Substitute can be problematic on faster mons if you can't fire off a status move like Thunder Wave. It's rough out there for this guy, I'll be honest. So anything that's generally in that upper third tier of a draft board that is above 100 base attack, it's going to cause problems for Mr. Mime, plain and simple. Screamtail and other fast disruptors like it, if they can get above Mr. Mime's speed and click Taunt or Encore, Mr. Mime just has a bad time and can't do 90% of what it wants to do a lot of the time. If you're the offensive set as well, guess what? Screamtail has good defenses, so you're still not making a lot of progress. Unfortunate. Also, ghost types. I did not want to include a specific ghost type because most of them are very good against Mr. Mime. They spin block against Mr. Mime Galar, which is really annoying. They tend to have decent special bulk, which is going to be your primary move pool. So anything outside of Dusk Noir is going to be rough. So yeah, most ghost types are going to be pretty problematic. I've listed a few that are generally in that mid to high tier, but it is not just those ones. It is, again, most ghost types are going to give Mr. Rhyme problems, especially if they're faster. Now, what can Mr. Mime actually play against and is decent against? First one, Sylveon. Sylveon's very commonly drafted as the support wish-passing Fairymon for a lot of teams. And Soundproof blocks Hyper Voice, right? That's really useful. You even have access to the very fun move in Snatch, where you can steal wishes. that are going to be passed to opponents. So actually has a decent role against Sylveon, and that extends to Florges. So Florges is another special attacking mon that lacks the coverage to outside of Terra to really threaten Mr. Mime, and it can become a victim to Taunt and Encore, and again, even Snatch Wish Passing. So that is something I really like about Mr. Mime's capabilities in a team, is it does have uses against other support mons that are a little bit slower than it. Also, weirdly enough, Iron Bundle. So if we're looking at a offensive mon, you can see the next one, but bulky, special defensive Mr. Mime Galar, even with choice specs, so if you're against choice specs Iron Bundle, there is a slim margin you can survive getting two O-code by choice specs Iron Bundle, which is nice. I think it's like 14% that you survive getting hit twice. So that's better than a lot of other mons that are out there. And then you can also threaten back to Oka with Thunderbolt, since Iron Bundle does not have good special defense. Though if you want to swap this in and be able to absorb the Hydro Pumps, you might want to pack Citrus Berry just to guarantee yourself that. But hey, it's a high tier mon that Mr. Rhyme and Mr. Mime Galar can actually play against. Another one, Rotom Wash. So a very I don't think I've seen a draft league that hasn't drafted Rotom Wash because of the roll compression, the typing, and just the overall ability of this mon. But you can disrupt it pretty well. You have Freeze Dry, for example, on Mr. Mime Galar to hit it super effectively. You have Toxic that can status it and really stymie it. You don't have great HP, which means Pain Split is pretty bad against you, actually. So it's one of those things that works really to your benefit here, is not having good HP. And then you can still kind of win the hazard war. I say hazards in quotes, but with screens and stuff, if they want to keep defogging on you, they certainly can. Again, you can threaten them with your generally better status options. And then also Swampert. Swampert's another mon that's very commonly drafted due to its typing. Gets shredded by Freeze Dry, right? And you can also taunt it since you're faster, Magic Coat it, Reflect Rocks back, Rapid Spin in its face. Just be careful about taking an EQ if you're using Cantonian Mr. Mime, as you will melt to all of Swampert's physical attacks, but if you're using the Galarian version, you actually have a really nice kind of opening here to get rid of a team's rocker, their Volt Switch blocker, etc. I really like this kind of option. So overall, estimated round value, what to expect out of it, only if you have to. Final pick if needed, right? I lean more towards the Galarian version or Mr. Rhyme itself, but you could take regular Mr. Mime. It's gonna give you some freeze dry value. I think that's the most important thing when paired with Rapid Spin, and then slack off if you went with Mr. Rhyme, and you get a suite of other supports. And if you know you're going to be against some people that are running Tapu Koko screens or Grimmsnarl or Alolan Ninetales, Screen Cleaner is a great deterrent for those kinds of strategies that want to throw up screens and bring in their offensive threat, where Mr. Mime and Mr. Rhyme kind of say no to that, even if they do get blasted by most offensive mons. So, as a Terra captain, Cantonian, please don't do it. That's a waste of a slot, I think, just due to how paper thin its defenses are on the physical side. The Galarian version, though, I think there is a case to be made if it's your second or third Terra option. Be wary, though, it doesn't get Terra Blast, so that kind of sucks, but you get Bolt Beam coverage with some other spice thrown in there, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And you can lean more into the actual specially defensive walling qualities. And so that wraps up Mr. Mime Galar, and Mr. Rhyme. Oh, it is certainly a mon of all-time draft. Now, if you manage to have some success with it, please let me know. Post in the comments if you've got a particular set or something that you've seen drafted or drafted yourself. I'm curious to know. And we'll continue here on Focus Miss Gaming to look at other potential options that are out in the field and find those more obscure mons that maybe you want to draft, but maybe you're not as confident as wanting to take due to risk of losing out, because you're like, I don't want to take a bad mon and be forced to use it. Well, This is what we're here for. We're going to figure things out and see just how viable they get. So anyways, thanks for listening if you've been here the whole time, and have a great day.